I told y'all remote work would not last forever, and it looks like I'm right. Even President Biden is mentioning in speeches that the end of remote work is here. Hi, my name is April. I'm a tech recruiter, and I've been talking about how remote work affects the real estate industry and big tech salaries that are offered to employees. Well, things are changing quickly. The question is remote work gone forever, and what happens next? Obviously, remote work has changed the industry. Reports show that 26% of all job postings in San Francisco are fully remote, with 19% in New York City and 13% in Columbus. But let's be real, more than 13% of the people looking for jobs nowadays want remote, and only 13% of those jobs are remote. So we can already start seeing some changes, but the big question is, why are we getting rid of remote? Why are all these CEOs getting rid of remote? And of course, the first response is going to be, well, obviously leadership wants to keep a closer eye on their employees so they can better micromanage them and their work, a control aspect. And while that would make sense to an employee, anyone in management knows that people in management get paid to micromanage, and that can be a huge waste of money if you have a manager that spends too much of their time micromanaging their employees. That's just water going out the window. So micromanagement is not the reason. When I hear the micromanage claim, I do have a bit of a news flash to give everyone watching this video. A lot of employers in America are struggling to hire remote employees. Why? Because many remote employees pose as Americans when they are overseas. And I've seen this happen to multiple companies in multiple industries. They hire someone that they believe is in the US, but for some reason they have a weird phone number, or they struggle to be available during regular work hours, just to find out that they are a developer overseas. And you can go look for yourself on Reddit or YouTube. Tons of people are giving advice to international workers on how to get a high-paid tech salary job in the US, how to pose like an American resident applying for these remote jobs. Now, as a caveat here as well, remote workers want to hire people in their country for tax purposes. If I, Amazon, want to hire people remote in Estonia, well, I would be better suited to have another company hire those employees, and I just pay the company, a consulting company, to manage those employees. That frees me from a ton of risk as well as any tax liabilities, and I'm just paying for a service. But if you are a company in the US that's not Amazon, you are a small startup trying to outsource employees overseas, well, the big problem comes up with outsourcing in tech, that you can't really manage the quality of the code, manage the work, the teams just don't function the same. But of course you have the tax burden. And yeah, everyone across the world knows that the US pays the most for software engineers, and they don't care about our tax regulations. I cannot underestimate to you how many messages I get per day from people who are in Pakistan or Ethiopia asking to interview for my fully remote roles I have listed. It is honestly a huge waste of my time and very annoying. Even today, I got a message from a project manager in Pakistan. Now, I don't want to target countries. I'm just coming up with what's coming to me on my mind, but messaging me for a PM role, I tell him, no, we only hire US citizens. Does not take no for an answer. And that's kind of new. In the past, when I had these international people asking to apply to my remote job, well before COVID, they would take no for an answer. But clearly, the industry of being an international worker posing as an American resident working remote has become so common now that they're really pushing back. That is something that people should consider. When an employer asks for the employees to come in office, there is a huge problem with these remote employees that create all these tax liabilities and tax issues. Not only that, but it's also taking jobs away from Americans. It's not that easy to get a software job, especially if you are an entry-level engineer. You probably are struggling a lot on the job market. So just imagine that your entry-level software job might be going to a remote worker overseas simply because they are posing as an American living in the US, not because they are more qualified, not because the company wants to hire international workers. It's because someone gamed the system. That is a really big impact of remote work that people are not considering. But the other aspect, of course, is commercial leases. If a company has built a commercial building for their offices, they are not going to want to give that up so quickly. So bringing people in office makes a justification for that lease. But that is the number one reason I'm hearing for people saying that remote work is ending. And that is not really an authentic statement. That's very misdirected and coming from the employee only. There is another problem. There is another really obvious reason to me as someone in HR why people are being asked to come in office. It is a lot easier to get rid of an employee by saying that they refuse to come in office than it is to get rid of an employee by laying them off. If you've watched my layoff video, you know that some of these big tech companies give away like 20 grand in severance, which is huge. That's paying out PTO, severance, but that's a big hunk of cash. If you, the employer, says, hey everyone, come back into office, otherwise if you don't, it's a voluntary resignation. Well, guess what? They might not have to give you any severance. They certainly don't have to pay for unemployment because you voluntarily resigned. You were not fired in any way, so you can't get unemployment insurance, and the company's unemployment insurance rate does not go up. So obviously that is a big reason for why remote work is ending. If you watch my channel, maybe you work in the tech industry and maybe you've gotten a job in the tech industry before, you should know that hiring is down for the 4th straight month in a row in the US. We have CEOs are reducing funds not only by laying people off, but reducing the amount of swag new employees get. If you've ever been hired at a big startup, you get a cool backpack, a sweatshirt, a hoodie. If you've lived in San Francisco, there's a chance you've seen a homeless person wearing startup swag because there was so much of it. But clearly things are not going well if CEOs are having to restrict the amount of free stuff they give out. And news says that boomers are clinging onto their jobs, as they should. This problem that we have encountered with remote work, where international employees pose as Americans taking these remote jobs, has created a stronger sense of distrust between the employee and employer, especially when hiring remote individuals. But generally speaking, companies will do less background checks, will do less double checking when they are trying to hire quickly. The company is growing and stocks are up. But when hiring slows down, the company is no longer growing as quickly, or stocks are down, then they're going to spend more time on the job search. Combine that with the aspect of people pretending to be Americans to get American jobs. Well, we're going to have a bigger problem in the future. You should be worried a little bit about your job search in the next 5 years. I would expect employers to increase the number of interviews going forward, increase the number of people in each interview, and in general, take a longer time to hire employees. If you've ever interviewed for Amazon, you understand what that take a longer time means. They take months and months, but most companies that have successfully hired people quickly will take 2, 3, 4 weeks to hire someone. Well, those days are gone. And if you've worked in tech, you're probably used to getting a ton of messages from recruiters pitching you jobs on a regular basis. Well, guess what? You're going to see a lot more of the no remote available in the job titles, or you might just see a lower amount of messages from recruiters. I've already talked to people in the industry for months now. They have noticed a reduced number of messages from recruiters, but it's going to change even more. People in, it said Cincinnati, Ohio, only 13% of the jobs are remote, but you know there's a lot more than 13% of the population working remote thanks to COVID. Well, a lot of those people who maybe moved out to Cincinnati from New York, they got a great deal on a house because they're remote. There's a high chance that they have to go back in office. And most people will just look for a new job before they'll look for a new house. It seems to be a lot easier to get a new job than a new house. So I would expect the competition to be going up for jobs as well. I've said that on my channel in other videos, that just generally speaking, the competition in tech is going up. The tech talent gap is gone. So you can't count on the idea that there are more tech jobs than there are tech candidates. So do I think remote is going away forever? Well, no, remote's been around since the 90s, and it's been a great technique used for tech, not only because of distributed teams, but the common personality problem seen a lot in the tech industry. Just put someone remote and they're no longer a personality problem. So tech is never going to go away. So remote will never go away. That's just is what it is. Remote existed long before COVID, so it's not suddenly going to disappear because Biden says it's going to disappear. But I would expect more entry-level jobs to go on site. I just hired a entry-level software engineer and we required him to come on site because of his seniority, not for any other factor, but because he was junior. So if you are someone that's early in your career and you're really stuck on that remote job, I would suggest that you let go of that stubbornness and consider it an on-site role. I do understand these big expensive cities are hard to live in, but yeah, girl rented a $600 room in San Francisco for years, and I had to live in that crazy place, and now look, here I am. So it could be you too. If you really are stuck on remote, get ready to die on that hill. Get ready to let job opportunities pass you by and your career just to grow more slowly. Unfortunately, people who are junior in their career are the ones that are expected to take the most risk. You have less to risk, honestly. You don't have a career or reputation. Most young people don't have a family or significant insurances to pay, so they're able to take more risk. If you are more senior in your career and you're really set on the remote aspect, I would suggest to become as active as possible in the remote worker community. There's tons of social groups, there's tons of remote only companies. You just need to know what those remote only companies are, be on the social networks, be in the link. That way you will know what jobs to apply for and you might get recommendations from your internet friends. And if you are an employer trying to decide if you want to force people on site for your job, obviously it's going to be way easier to hire people if you offer full-time remote. It has always been easier to hire for full-time remote. That is not a COVID thing. If you have the entire world available to pick from, well, most people will accept remote. There's only a few candidates I've talked to who really insist on site. So if you're struggling to hire, do remote. Don't force people in office. But if you are on the job search, better to subscribe to my channel. I have more updates coming, like what jobs to not apply for and what industries to not start a startup in. Don't mean to be a negative Nancy, but things are changing in the tech industry and I am the only one telling you. So be sure to subscribe. And I am the only one telling you. So be sure to subscribe to my channel and see my next video. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.